There is a story that you gave me, a book that you, right here, you said that you, here's something I contributed to in this
Yes, yes.
anthology.
It's an
From the flag,
anthology.
yeah, from the flag to the cross. Let me see if I can pull this up on my computer.
Yes.
Now, what is this anthology? Give us a breakdown. This is why I pulled this up.
It's about fascism, the Trump election. Myself and other contributors, including Chris Hedges, Richard Wolff, Shama Sawant, Henry Giroux, and Bill Mullen, Diane Feely, and others, each talking about fascism in the U.S. And it came about as a result of Trump's election. Here it is again, Or Books. You can get it from orbooks.com. Bookstores the usual. And it's edited by Michael Stephen Smith and Zachary Sklar. I wanted to get that right. There you go. From the flag to the cross, fascism, American style. And you can see the image. Of course, it's Trump. And in my the chapter, I talk about how Trump won again, the failures of the Democratic Party, the failures of neoliberalism, the collusion of Democrats with their oligarchs. That's why Trump won again. You can't have a Democratic Party, which knows, by the way, what their people want. Remember when Biden first came in and he's going to be the most progressive president since FDR. He's going to cut
according to Bernie Sanders. Yeah, according to Bernie Sanders.
Yes, and others, and they jumped on it. They all repeated it. He would cut child poverty in half. Remember that? So that was all to get the progressive wing, the leftish wing of the Democratic Party, to keep them in support of Biden. But that is proof they know that's what Democrats want. That's what the Democratic voters want. But did they do that? No. There was COVID funding, so there were a lot of programs, but then they ended. And I have said jokingly that if people still had their child tax credit, they wouldn't have cared that Biden had dementia. They would have supported him anyway. It's kind of, I'm sort of joking, but sort of not. Speaking of Palestine, the fact that the genocide belonged to Joe Biden, I believe was very harmful. It tamped down enthusiasm for him and for Kamala Harris. The fact that I think it's interesting that, as you recall, the Democratic Party oligarchs, the big wealthy billionaire funders who run the Democratic Party, they pulled the plug on Biden after they had this early debate with Trump. It was unusual to have a debate in June. But yes, they did, to get rid of him instead of getting rid of him the year before. I mean, I remember like a year before Election Day, he had his approval ratings were in not 50%. You can't win re-election when your approval rating isn't 50%. That's not going to happen. But they stuck with him anyway. I mean, they rigged it for him. I figured I kept saying they're going to rig it for somebody else. They're going to get rid of him. But it played out in this bizarre way. And then he chose Kamala Harris, which I think is very funny.
Yes.
That he chose Kamala Harris to get back at the people who kicked him out. Obama, Nancy Pelosi, they had a plan for an open convention. I don't know what that would have looked like, but they wanted to give some semblance that the people had chosen someone else. And Biden undercut all of them. He just endorsed Kamala Harris, who Obama, I'm not a fan, but he's a smart guy. He knew she wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
He didn't want him to do it, but he did. And the rest is history. And every time people cry out and whine about Trump, I want to remind them of how this came about. The Democratic Party being run by people who they don't want us to get what we want. Their job is to make sure that the Democrats do not do what their people want them to do. So, of course, you're going to lose. if you have a president who isn't popular, who doesn't look healthy. I mean, people talked about Biden being too old. I think it was, he just didn't look healthy. And once a critical mass of people observed Biden and said, and asked themselves, can he be the president? Can he run again? Then it's over for him. Clearly it's over for him, but you either have to stick with him or get rid of him like a year before election day. I mean, even that's kind of late. Yep. But they didn't. So that was the topic I covered, how the Democrats are to blame for Trump winning.
They are. I mean, you can even go more, I guess, pull out the scope and say this kind of elites. I mean, because let's be honest, they are not hurt, hindered, damaged at all by Donald Trump winning the race. It's almost as if they want to beat the public into submission to say, this is all you get. This is all you can get. This is all you need to accept, et cetera. This is what America is moving from this point on. And we, the Democratic Party, this is all you're going to accept. And we will be a finger in the dam, but that is it, no more. And when the public is like, well, wait a minute, we need you to be more than a finger in the dam. They say, okay, here's Trump. And then they would complain about him. They would, go through all of these movements and gyrations and everything else. And then the next election come around, they'll try to use Trump once again as an excuse. Like, that process needs to be broken. It needs to be smashed to bits. And the only way to smash to bits is to let them fail and lose continuously, even with the consequences of a Republican Party coming into play. I don't know another way around fixing that. Like, there's this book, End Times. I was talking about it with Carl Shaw. And it goes into this notion of how elites, there's an overproduction of elites. There's an overrepresentation of elites in society. And because the balance has effectively been upended, then you get a wealth pump where they're extracting resources from the bottom half of the country up to them. And you get a very angry, eviscerated public that has their pitchforks. And you get an underclass that wants to move into the elite section. But because there are so many elites already that they can't get into that section, which ends up creating all sorts of chaos in a society that usually takes about a 200-year cycle. That's where we are. I mean, like, it's so, like, going through the book and the examples and everything else, it's so dead on. It's just taken an American context and an American political system in the way that it's operated. And in fact, Chris Hedges talks about this, where he talks about this kind of immiseration of the working class, this nihilistic point of view that people take on because they feel disassociated from their political space or from their government. Yeah, I think that's where we are. I think you're dead on. I think you're absolutely
that is where we are, and we're seeing it. That's why there's this freak out about Zoran Mamdani winning the Democratic primary in New York, because these oligarchs, the people who run the party, the last thing they want is someone telling people, you can have what you want. I can provide some of the things you want. Let's talk about some of these things. And that's why they have lost their minds, because they want Democratic voters to resign themselves to getting nothing, to getting rhetoric, to not liking Trump, or something that doesn't substantively change anybody's life. And for someone in the nation's biggest city to win a Democratic Party because he told people, yes, you can have these things that you want. Let's talk about it. They have lost it. But there's a lot of anger. And that's why, election day is not until November. So we're 3 months out from the actual general election. But that's why he's ahead in the polls. Wow. He's ahead of Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced former governor and disgraced current mayor, both running as independents, still on the ballot to try to get rid of him. And speaking of Zionism, Andrew Cuomo saying, now it looks as though most Jewish voters are backing Mamdani. But Cuomo says he's against it. Something so crazy. It's like, wait a minute. So these Jewish voters who want to vote for him.
What do you call them? Self-hating Jews?
What are you talking about? But that's all he has to offer. He had a lot of rich friends who promoted him, but he lost anyway. They're stuck with Adams, with backing Adams or Cuomo. Adams, there was a report about how he used the NYPD. His dumb cronies were running the police department. They were crooked. It was like really bizarre. Twin brothers, the commissioner and his twin brother were doing all kinds of shady, sketchy things. A lot of Adams people had to quit. Some of them have been indicted. So that's the choice against Mamdani, and that's why Mamdani has a good chance to win. But it tells you this freak out, this reaction against him is breaking potentially. We have to be, we can't act like Mamdani can be our savior, but potentially he is showing a pathway to breaking this horrible oligarchic rule of the Democratic Party, and that's why they're losing it.
Yeah, he has to succeed. Like,
yes,
it's one thing.
And should he win, they are going to do everything they can to try to keep him from succeeding. Yes. They're not going to fold up their tent and go home. They're going to obstruct. They're going to use their money. They're going to do everything they can to try to stop him.
Yep. And they'll say, see, look at this. I mean, the reality of it is, though, it's not like they succeeded. I mean, they were effectively failures in one election after the next. I mean, the reason that Trump is in the office, as you point out so succinctly, is because of their failures. It's not like Democrats were doing fantastic and Donald Trump just so happened to get in office. That's not what was taking place.
No, it's yes, it's the failures of the Democratic. Well, I don't want to call it a failure because it implies that they were trying to do something that they weren't trying to do. So, like the exposure of the Democratic Party, the exposure of this corruption at the top, which has ruined the country, which has destroyed their party and its legitimacy. The Democratic Party, what was it last week? They said 35% approval rating. Yeah. I mean, even as people don't like Trump and he has a high disapproval rating, there's an equally high disapproval rating of the Democrats because people see this party that literally doesn't know what to do. I mean, not even to rhetorically fight against Trump and then collude with him when it comes to something like Israel. So they'll still work with him on their joint pet projects. So they're of course they're trotting out these names. Should it be Gavin Newsom? Should it be this one? Should it be that one for 2028? Kamala Harris needs to sit down. I know she wrote a book. Who cares? I can't imagine. The only reason I would read her book is so I could make fun of her, and I would have to read the book in order.
I couldn't believe somebody gave her money to write a book. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe how I spent $1 billion in 3 months and lost.
Yeah,
that's what
that's what the book should be called, $1 Billion Loser. But that tells you how the system works. These people gave her all this money, she lost, and they're still promoting her. I cannot believe it. And I saw a video the other day. Half the time she looks drunk. She can't string sentences together. I cannot believe that anybody thought she was going to win and is still trying to push her as a viable candidate. Of course, she wants to run again, but that doesn't mean anybody else needs to help her run again. Hopefully they'll have a real primary and, they'll figure things out. But it needs to be someone, an independent person, I think, who can defeat the Republicans. Trump won't run again. Even he has stopped talking about being able to run again, because this is his second term, so that's it for the presidency.
Yeah.
But whoever is
himself, actually.
He what?
He's looking like hell himself, actually, this time around.
But yes, he is.
This term.
So
he's gonna sail through this one. Yeah.
But I also want to talk about Trump and all these efforts to try to get rid of him that backfired so spectacularly. These court cases, I think most of them, the court case in New York where he was convicted of all these felonies, I thought that stunk to high heaven. Yes. It was an attempt to keep him from running again. But Trump, that is his strength, that he will fight to stay in, that if you oppose him, that he fights all the harder. So I believe that by taking him to court in all these cases, I think it helped him to win again.
Yeah, I mean, it was so silly though. It was, what is it? The sex, Stormy Daniels, the case. I mean, it even looks silly. You had a porn star coming and sitting on the stand, coming up with all of this sexual content about Donald Trump, and it's like, okay, this looks like a clown car, and they effectively made the argument that because Donald Trump paid to hush a porn star, that is equivalent to paying campaign finance, basically breaking campaign finance laws. Now, when Hillary Clinton did this, where Clinton effectively bought a dossier, paid her lawyer to name it something else, legal fees, and they found out that, oh, wait, you mean these legal fees paying for a dossier? Okay, well, you can't do that. You have to enumerate that. So we're going to slap you on the knuckles. But Donald Trump, they literally tried to put him in a cage and call the exact same crime, him calling paying off a porn star, as a legal expense, as a felony. Okay, I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I thought Donald Trump should have been impeached and convicted after January 6th. This was nonsense. This was just nonsense. And, you know, you have one legal case after the next. You know, we're going to go after Trump for withholding presidential files. And you find out, wait a minute, Joe Biden had those things going back to when he was a senator. And nobody cared, but you care now. Like, the hypocrisy was so over the top that, I don't know. I think if you were a Democrat, you might have been up in arms. If you were a regular person who had any sense of hypocrisy, you looked at this as, okay, this is nonsense. At least that's my thought.
Well, I you know, the documents case, I thought it was funny because it was very Trumpian. You know, there's a Presidential Records Act. It makes clear papers don't belong to the president. Right. They belong to I believe the National Archives until they set up a library and whatever. But only Trump would take these documents and then have them in his bathroom in Mar-a-Lago. Nobody else would do that. And I'm not saying he should have done it, but it was another effort to get him. He was hiding, proof of, Russian collusion. They occasionally they still drag that out in an attempt to stick that on him. But instead of trying to get Trump, all that energy should have been used to get rid of Biden and get somebody else. They wouldn't have to worry about Trump. But
who else?
But that's something.
I don't even know who else they could have used. I mean, like, Harris was a dead letter.
Well, they should have let her run and lose, and so people could stop talking about her. So okay, we'll have an open primary. We'll let people run. People will see Kamala Harris come in at dead last again, and nobody will talk about her again. But I'm still kind of stunned by the passivity of these billionaire donors, that they sat around all that time, and then their way out was to set Biden up. Oh, let's have an early primary, and then we can get rid of him. It boggles my mind that anybody thought that was going to work, and now we are all living with Trump. Thanks to them.
I think they thought that between the two, because the narrative flipped, and it's funny how media does that. How we believe something to be completely and entirely true as if God himself said it for 6 months, and then on the dime, we never believed that this thing was true, et cetera, et cetera. Where they initially was like, well, Joe Biden has the strongest chance. And Joe Biden obviously has the strongest chance. Kamala Harris is not that well liked. She's not that well liked in the administration. The public doesn't like her that much. They think she's a weird laugh. They think she's a little odd. They don't think she can win. And then overnight, it becomes, we always knew Kamala Harris had a great chance of winning. Kamala Harris can totally win this race. Kamala Harris is this and this and this. And then we find out behind the scenes, her polling was never that great. I mean, even after the debate performance, okay, she might have popped up, but it wasn't something that was sustained. I'm curious from your take on this. What do you think? Like, do you think it really was, well, Kamala Harris was just that bad? I mean, because if you remember Democrats, people start saying, well, Democrats are elitists. Democrats have betrayed the working class. Democrats don't represent the working class. Weirdly enough, the Republicans, this blue-collar billionaire represents the working class. Like it just got totally warped in the way that, I mean, they're not wrong. The Democrats don't represent the working class, but I'd be damned if you're going to put on the Republican Party as if they're representative of anything of the working class, especially when you got a billionaire running. What do you think happened in this? That is it just the public didn't have anywhere to go? Lesser of the two evils? What do you think they went with this?
Why you mean why Harris lost?
Yeah, like why do you think they ended up with Trump as a vote? I mean, it could be 2 months or the 3 months she had to run her campaign. It could be the main. No,
I call her a hollow woman. You know, there's no there. There's nothing there. She's not impressive in any way. I mean, her political rise just astounds me. I never found her impressive. She doesn't come off as being, there are moments when she can buckle down, like during her debate with Trump, she did well. But then she goes on Oprah and says, if somebody comes to my house, I'm going to shoot him. You know, it's like, and it was just ridiculous. But that's the real her, the unserious person, the word salads, coming off as being as if she's drunk. That's the real Kamala Harris, and she can struggle against it and come off looking a little better. But basically, you know, you run for the presidency because enough people because you have this primary system, right. And whoever comes out at the end, that however well or badly it works, that person was chosen by the people in that party across the country. And they just dispensed with that. And they propped this. I used to say she was the female Dan Quayle. Remember Dan Quayle, who was vice president under Bush the Elder? And he was not wrong, right? And he was, said stupid things. And, so there's a tradition for that. Someone being a vice president who's kind of a dim bulb. And that's who she was. And for them to think that she could escape scrutiny, that she could, and do you remember when they first announced she was running and her website had nothing on it? Her campaign website had nothing on it for like 50 months. Days. Yep. And then when they did, it was a bad copy and paste of Biden. Do you remember that? And I was like, I remember I was like, I looked at the website and it was like, how you can donate. I was like, okay, you'd expect that. And it's like Kamala's bio. Okay, you would expect that. And I'm like, well, what is what is she proposing? What is she saying she's going to do? Where does she stand on the issues? And for like 50 days, she had a website with nothing on it. And that does not inspire confidence. Now, I know people who say there was sexism and a woman can't win. There are people who don't want to vote for a woman. Yes, there are people who don't want to vote for a woman, but it can't be that woman. It can't be, somebody with a weird cackle who's got nothing on her website. It certainly can't be her. So there were people who voted for Biden who wouldn't vote for her. I think it was 6 million fewer votes she got than Biden got 4 years earlier. Yeah. So, it was just this fantasy that she could win. It's still bizarre to me that this happened at all.
I get the sense that Democrats are beyond this idea of having to put up policy, and that they thought that they can just run, Trump sucks, Trump is horrible, Trump's a fascist, Trump going to put people up against a wall and shoot them. And it's like, isn't it obvious that I'm a better choice than Trump? So you should elect me. And they were mystified when people. And
that does not get anybody. There are people who are always going to vote. You don't have to convince them. They're reliable voters. They're going to vote every 4 years, if not more often. Mm-hmm. But then there are people who, if they don't feel moved, they're not voting.
Right.
And you can't use this argument of so-and-so so horrible. They may not vote for that person, but they may not vote for anybody at all. They'll just stay home. And I think that's what happened, that she lost every swing state. I mean, every single one. That just tells you people didn't want her. the slice of the electorate that she did win was very small. It tended to be, well-educated white people. Most Black people still voted for the Democrat, but it was by a smaller number. She lost the, not lost, most Latinos voted for her, but it was a big drop. It was like 52% or something, like barely a majority.
Yeah.
So I don't like these efforts to figure out why Latinos wouldn't vote for her and all that. It's like she was not very good. So stop it. Stop, trying to dissect Latinos. Now people are, ha, now you're getting deported. You should have voted for this horrible person you didn't like. You can't. It was just ridiculous that they thought they could pull this off.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to have to check out that chapter. I would imagine that it's going to be a pretty spirited chapter. And the other authors also really good. Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges is a fantastic writer. Definitely check. And just so the audience can see what the book is again, one more time, it is From Flag.
From the Flag to the Cross. Fascism, American Style. And some folks talk about the election itself. Some talk about fascism and what that looks like in the country. There's always debate about what fascism is and is not. But I feel like there's a good cross-section of people giving their opinions in the book. And I would love to come back again and talk about it some more, talk about my chapter.
Absolutely. We have Chris Hedges, Richard Wolff, Dwayne, I think this is Diane Philly, Henry Garox. I don't know him. I know the other ones. Bill Muller, of course, Margaret Kimberley. Shamar Shawant. She is fantastic, by the way, too.
Yes, it is.
Margaret, you have my deepest appreciation for joining me. I always appreciate these conversations. And just so the audience will know, Margaret Kimberley, she's a senior columnist and editor at Black Agenda Report and author of Presidential, Black America and the Presidents. You can find her on Twitter at Freedom Ride Blog. By the way, is there anywhere else that people can find you?
That's where I am most of the time. I'm on Blue Sky. I have a Facebook page, but Twitter's where you get the bang for your buck. X, I guess I'm still not saying X, but that's where you get the bang for your buck. I do have a Patreon, Margaret Kimberley, but basically Twitter, and you can see my link tree and all the things I do.
Patreon.com/Margaret Kimberley.
Yes.
Perfect. Pluto is a planet. Damn it, I'm staying with Twitter. I'm going to ride or die. You have a fantastic day, all right? Thank you.
You too. Thanks so much.
All right. Fantastic guest. Always love Margaret Kimberley. Always love it.